Hello Year 5 and welcome to Tuesday's tutorial for the blue and green group. Can I use parenthesis to add detail to my writing? So by now you should have listened to this clip, 16 minutes long, that gives a bit more detail to the myth of the Trojan War, part 1, which is sort of why it happened, and then parts 2 and 3 explain the war itself. So now you have a really good idea of what happened and why. And you should have some notes that look a bit like this. These are my notes that were just for part 1. So that first section, which was a few minutes long. Cities likely to go to war. Troy was the biggest war. Zeus was given a golden apple. 3 goddesses tried to claim it. A human had to decide. Paris had struggled to make the decision. Aphrodite offered him a wife if he picked her, which he did, and the others wanted revenge. His sister tried to warn him that bad things were going to happen. Aphrodite makes Helen love Paris, so they run away together, and then the husband wanted revenge. So you might be thinking, well, why is this important? This is important because you are going to be writing a battle speech. You are going to be a general in either the Trojan or the Greek army, you can pick, and you are going to be trying to motivate your troops to fight. And it's really important you know what happened and why, so that you can sort of motivate your troops in the right way. So if you were a Greek general, you could say, they stole Helen from us and we need to get her back. So in order to do that, we need to look at something that we've briefly touched on throughout the year, which is parenthesis. Now, parenthesis comes in 3 main forms. It comes in brackets, which look like this. It comes in between commas, or it can come in between dashes. And what parenthesis is an extra clause and extra information to give our text some detail. So if we were to use, well, you can see here we've got 3 different options, and actually the reason we use each one is different. So if you are just adding sort of an extra fact in just for some information, you would use brackets. Information contained in brackets is less important than the sentence you're talking about. It's just spare information. So an example of this, the king, and you might say the king, who was 45, sailed across the sea. So I don't need to know that he's 45, but I'm providing additional information that's less important than my actual sentence. And you always need to be careful in parentheses that this information links. So who was 45? Does his age tell me about? No. Why he's going across the sea? Probably not. So I might change that to a feeling. So the king, who was scared, sailed across the sea. We use commas for information that is of the same importance. It helps with the level of detail that I'm trying to add. So if I go back to my Greek research, Troy was the biggest war. So Troy, a city in Turkey, was at the centre of the biggest Greek war. And you can see that is as important information because I'm telling my reader where Troy is. And then dashes. Dashes is information that is probably more important that you really want to emphasise. Helen, who was already married, ran away with Paris. I'll just put my W in there. So, brackets, information that is less important than what you're actually trying to say. Commas, information that is probably on the same level. And dashes, information that you want to really, really emphasise. And what's important here, also to note, is here I have who. I have two relative pronouns. And quite often, what you can find is that the information you contain within your parenthesis will be a relative clause. Not always, as you can see from our middle example with commas, but if you are struggling, I would always suggest you to write a relative clause. So write your sentence, you might then pick one of the nouns and add the detail in the form of a relative clause, and then write out, and then you can surround it with your parenthesis, either your brackets, your comma, or your dashes. So your task, using your research, using the text that you looked at yesterday, that will help you too, is to create, I would suggest, at least 3 examples of each, brackets, commas and dashes, 3 sentences for brackets, 3 sentences containing commas, 3 sentences containing dashes, about what you've just listened to. Don't overcomplicate it, just write your sentence about a factual event that happened and then see where could I add a little bit more information. If you're unsure, pause, rewind, have a look at the tutorial again. Don't forget to submit your sentences to your teacher, and I will see you on the next tutorial.